Buildings are hard to decarbonize, and I'm going to talk to Jim Fonger, who's the Canadian Vice President, Asset and Advanced Technology Development for Ameresco, about a new business model that's emerged to help schools, in this case, decarbonize and reduce the emissions from their buildings. So welcome to the interview, Jim.
Markham, thanks very much for having me. I've been looking forward to it.
Well, look, this is energy as a service is kind of a new business model. Can you explain? There's a school in Ontario where you've applied this already. Can you give us an overview of the project, please?
Sure, absolutely, be happy to. And energy as a service, from its principal standpoint, is really a way for businesses, institutions to decarbonize their facilities in an affordable manner. Just a bit of background on John Paul II Secondary School, which is in London, Ontario. It's one of the larger high schools that are there. Ameresco has actually done a significant amount of energy savings work at the school, although there was more work to be done at the beginning of the project. And back in 2017, Natural Resources Canada released Energy Innovation Program, which was looking for new projects that would show new ways to decarbonize buildings. Ameresco has been in the conservation business, saving carbon reductions for over 20 years now, but has really moved forward on finding ways to not only save energy in facilities, but find ways for them to decarbonize. And as you probably know, there's lots of people talking about, lots of companies offering carbon reduction strategy plans for organizations. But the largest thing we have to deal with is how do we get off gas, especially where you are in BC, where you have, for the most part, a decarbonized electricity grid, and the same thing here in Ontario with what we have with nuclear. We're close to 94% carbon-free energy that's delivered. So what we have to do is find a way, how do we eliminate natural gas from the equation? And this particular project's objective was really to do that and find a way to do it affordably. So we went to Natural Resources Canada, said, we think we have an opportunity to put a good project together here. And could you help us provide the funding that's required, given that it was early in the game back in 2017? Energy prices had not risen to the point where it looked like they on their own could make a project like this work. Carbon prices, which are required, were still at the early stages. So we had to find a way to project that into the project, and equipment prices that we wanted to use hadn't come down to the level that are really required for doing this kind of thing moving forward back in 2017. So we said we need to find a way to put a project on the ground that from a technical standpoint can actually demonstrate to people that all this complex technology can be put together to actually achieve a significant project. So we went to Enercan, did what's called a FEED study, a front-end engineering design study to actually say that this is possible, and they came forward with some funding on that. So that's how the project got started.
Now, if I understand energy as a service correctly, Jim, is that the company undertaking the renovations, like Ameresco, actually funds or finances the cost of it, and then is paid back through the savings that the building achieves over a period of time. Have I got that correct?
Pretty much. Certainly, energy as a service is a replacement for how they currently buy their energy now. So the difference between an energy as a service contract, or we'll call it a power purchase agreement, is energy as a service is very much focused on the outcomes of the energy initiative, the energy measures that we put in place, both inside the facility and outside the facility. But yeah, Ameresco steps forward, brings its capital to the table, works with the finance companies in order to provide efficient debt capital to the project. And what the customer does is enter into a long-term agreement that says we're going to pay for the energy outputs that all these systems are providing over an extended period of time. And there's a couple of ways that they can justify it. It's not just in terms of energy savings, because there are significant energy savings that come forward in the project, but it's also carbon savings moving forward. What new technology do we bring into the equation that they would have had to put in otherwise? So there's a number of operational, we'll call them cash flow streams, that can be accessed for savings moving forward as part of the model.
So how was this model applied to this particular school in London, Ontario?
So what we did is, first of all, as I mentioned earlier in our discussion, we'd already started some conservation measures in the school. So the first thing we did was to ensure that the school had all of the energy conservation initiatives done in there to make sure it was effectively sipping energy on a move forward basis. And that required the replacement of a number of internal systems in the school. The other thing we did was to put in a geothermal system, which is a reasonably capital intensive system. And that was what we used to effectively finance or facilitate the carbon reduction. We wanted to get that school off gas. The next thing we did was to put in solar. And the real reason for solar on the site is to provide a long-term stable energy input that can actually provide the excess energy that the school was going to need to move to heat pumps, because heat pumps are something that take electrical energy to drive them. They're really the replacement for gas. But in order to do that effectively, you have to find kind of a long-term cheap energy source. And solar is in fact that new energy source that's emerging. Most of the solar panel manufacturers now will put out 30-year production warranties. So that's something that we could put over a long period of time. So we brought a lot of measures to the table that were capital intensive and basically bundled that into a bite-sized cash flow stream that the school could count on for a 25-year period to understand what their energy costs were going to be moving forward. And in terms of, was there a savings over what they were paying today? In fact, there's a small premium, but that premium also replaces capital equipment that they would have had to replace otherwise. So it's not just the energy savings that you're bringing to the project, but how you facilitate that capital pay down as well.
So bottom line, if I'm the chair of a school board and I'm looking at this and you've essentially brought a model to the table that makes it affordable to upgrade my schools.
Absolutely.
Now, I'm really curious, Jim. Yeah, there are millions of buildings in Canada. And we live in a cold climate, so in much of the country. So this is not an easy task, I guess, in some parts. What is the potential for this model to be used on schools, on other public buildings, on commercial buildings, those sorts of things? I mean, can we use this model to advance the decarbonization of the building stock faster than we've been doing it to date?
Absolutely, because what it allows customers to do is to access a financial model that allows them to get to their carbon reductions without having to dip into their own pockets to take cash away from their core business. That's the whole benefit of this particular model. And yes, it is at a school board. That's where the demonstration project is, but this can be used for virtually any part of the building stock moving forward that need to be retrofitted. Now, and from a financial standpoint, it works better in some provinces than others. So in places where there already is a decarbonized grid and what you want to do is you want to electrify more, it works very well. In other places where the electricity market itself is not so open, such as in Ontario and Alberta, which are really the two open markets in Canada, it gets more difficult and there's more work that has to be done at the regulatory level to make those other provinces that have unified utility companies to make this work. So what we wanted to do really here, Markham, was to demonstrate technically it could be done. It could work. And this project is up and operating, has been operating since May, and it's been flawless in terms of its delivery of energy to the school. So we've proven that it can work. We've proven we can integrate the systems. Now it's getting on with how do we change policy? How do we make sure it runs economically? We need to have things like carbon prices come into the marketplace. We need supply chain shortages that we have right now to disappear so that the equipment, the downward price in the equipment costs can continue. There are some things that we need. It's not a slam dunk, but it is very possible. And it certainly needs the desire by customers to get on with decarbonization.
Well, Jim, a fascinating example from Ontario of the energy as a service. Thank you very much for your insights. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Markham. Thanks for having me.